Hi, I'm Caitlin, one of the Financial Intelligence Analysts at the Isle of Man Financial Intelligence Unit. This is the first in a series of typology videos that we are planning to release alongside updated typology documents covering key areas of interest. The following examples are fictional scenarios, loosely based on the type of information received and analysed by the FIU, and follow on from previously issued typologies. Their purpose is to ensure those operating in the Isle of Man's regulated industries and those subject to financial sanctions regulations have sufficient knowledge and access to resources to identify this activity within our jurisdiction. Today's video will focus on financial sanctions, which is a topic that has been brought into the spotlight over the past year following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Sanctions are prohibitions and restrictions put in place with the aim of maintaining or restoring international peace and security. They generally target specific individuals or entities, or particular sectors, industries, or interests. They may be aimed at such people and things in a particular country or territory, or some organisation or element within them. There are also sanctions that target people and organisations involved in terrorism. As of the 3rd of April 2018, the FIU became the Isle of Man body to whom suspicions of breaches of financial sanctions should be reported. This role was previously undertaken by Customs and Excise. The FIU also receives reports where an organisation has frozen an account where they suspect a breach of financial sanctions. From the 1st of January 2021, EU sanctions no longer applied in the Isle of Man. The UK sanctions regime took precedent and has been applied in Isle of Man law. From that date, it became the policy of the Isle of Man government to maintain the implementation of international sanctions measures in the Isle of Man, in line with such measures as have effect in the United Kingdom. It is important to note that only breaches of UK sanctions should be reported to the FIU under the sanctions breach legislation option. Any matters relating to OFAC, EU or other sanctions regimes should be reported under POCA, APCA or Section 24 of the FIU Act. Typology 1. An Isle of Man registered yacht is owned by Mr. A through a complicated company structure. An Isle of Man Trust and Corporate Services Provider, or a TCSP, provides services to companies X and Y, both registered in the Isle of Man. Company Y hold the lease agreement for the yacht. Mr. A is the son of Mrs. A, who is designated under EU and UK sanctions. When the designation was identified, the yacht was deregistered in the Isle of Man. It is suspected that the vessel has made multiple journeys after the registration had been removed, which may constitute a possible breach of EU and UK sanctions. The TCSP therefore report the potential breach to the FIU. In this scenario, the TCSP has no operational control over the vessel, therefore would not be seen as responsible for any breach. However, this example highlights the risks associated with arrangements over which a TCSP has limited operational control. Typology 2. Bank Y identify payments on the accounts of an Isle of Man TCSP that relate to a yacht owned by Mr. C, a sanctioned individual. The TCSP provides services to companies X and Z, which are in turn responsible for the operation of the yacht. Bank Y reports the suspected breach to the FIU. Despite the relationship between the TCSP and the operation of a yacht related to Mr. C and the sanctions against Mr. C, the TCSP does not make any disclosures to the FIU in relation to the matter. Should it be identified that the TCSP were aware of the connection to Mr. C and the sanctions designations against him, this may constitute a failure to report offence. This example highlights the importance of regular due diligence checks and timely reporting of suspicions to the FIU. Typology 3. An Isle of Man TCSP provides services to an Isle of Man registered company, Company X. The sole shareholder of the company is Company Z, which is registered internationally. The ultimate beneficial owner of Company Z is Mr. D. Following Mr. D becoming subject to a designation under OFAC sanctions, the shares in Company Z are all transferred to a third party, Mr. E, which in turn affects the ownership of Company X. Despite the changes affecting the Isle of Man company, the transfer occurs outside of the TCSP's control. As soon as the TCSP becomes aware of the change in ownership, they make a disclosure to the FIU under Section 24 of the FIU Act. The transfer of the shares would potentially constitute a breach of OFAC sanctions. However, it is hard to determine without a full investigation where the responsibility for the breach would lie. This example highlights the complexity of company structures and the difficulty in identifying culpability for breaches in such instances. Typology 4. Mr. F holds personal bank accounts on the Isle of Man with Bank X. Mr. F is an associate of Ms. G and has access to her bank accounts. Following Ms. G being designated under EU sanctions, both her and Mr. F anticipate that she will also be designated shortly after by the UK. In an attempt to circumvent the incoming UK sanctions, Mr. F attempts to transfer funds from the accounts of Ms. G into his personal accounts disguised as gifts. Bank X make a disclosure to the FIU under Section 24 of the FIU Act. Whilst this example is not a breach, the actions above demonstrate an attempt to circumvent incoming sanctions, and this type of information may ultimately help stop sanctioned individuals maintaining access to their funds via a third party. Typology 5. Mr. H is an Isle of Man resident who completed some labouring work for Mr. J whilst off island. Mr. J was a sanctioned individual and paid for the labour in foreign currency cash. Upon returning to the Isle of Man, Mr. H attempts to pay the foreign currency into his personal bank account held with Bank Y. Bank Y refused the deposit as the source of the funds, an invoice for the work, highlights the source as a sanctioned individual. Mr. H then takes a portion of the foreign currency to a money services business to exchange it for GBP. The money services business accepts the funds, pays them into their account, and then transfers them to the personal account of Mr. H with Bank Y. Bank Y then report the potential breach to the FIU, as they are aware of the original source of the funds. As Mr. H knew the origin of the funds, this would be considered a potential sanctions breach. This example highlights the importance of questioning the source of funds when accepting cash deposits and foreign exchanges. Hopefully, these examples give you an idea of the ways sanctioned individuals and their associates may try and exploit the Isle of Man financial system, and what to look out for when conducting business. We have released a typology document alongside this video, which contains additional examples and further information. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch.